Welcome to Talking Point from the Church's Fellowship for Psychical and Spiritual Studies.
The Resurrection of Christ and Quantum Physics, Science, Consciousness and Spiritual Reality, David Christie-Murray. This episode first appeared as an article in the March 1990 edition of the Christian Parapsychologist Journal, and may reflect the language and attitudes of the time in which it was written. Responsibility for opinions expressed herein rests solely with the author, and such opinions must not be taken to represent those of the CFPSS. Since my late teens, I have been fascinated by that most intriguing of all detective stories, the tale of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Few other incidents have been so thoroughly investigated. One incomplete bibliography lists well over 2,000 titles dealing solely with it. The Gospel accounts are full of inconsistencies, though there have been gallant attempts at reconciling them. N.P. Williams' The First Easter Morning is a notable one. And in the end, Christians have to reach their own conclusions as to which details they accept by faith, though based on reason, and which they reject. After a lifetime of reading all the books available to me about the resurrection, my own position is a fairly conservative one. I believe that the tomb was empty on the Sunday morning, following the crucifixion on Friday, that it was visited by some of Christ's followers, female and male, who found it vacant, and that Jesus did appear to his disciples in such a fashion that they were convinced that they had seen the solid flesh and blood, yet in some ways spiritualized body of their master. I cannot believe that a merely spiritual apprehension that he was alive was enough to account for the extraordinary growth of the Christian church. For it is human experience that the spiritual conviction of one individual in, say, conversion, means nothing to anyone else unless circumstances bring others to undergo it themselves, whereas the assertion by a body of believers that they had seen, handled, talked and eaten with the very Christ whom they had known to be dead some 40 hours earlier, and the euphoria resulting from that conviction, would be enough to persuade those of their hearers spiritually ready to receive it of the truth of their message. The Gospels and Acts recount only a small proportion of the happenings during the weeks following Jesus' death. It is legitimate to surmise other events that may have happened, provided that one recognizes that conjecture, even if likely to be accurate, may be wrong. Since Jesus was allegedly laid in a new tomb, containing no other bodies, the assertion that it was empty, whatever the reason for its being unoccupied, and many are given, could be tested by any doubter who was prepared to take a short walk, and a number of those who heard Peter's first preaching of the resurrection may well have gone to see for themselves. If the belief that the tomb was empty and that Jesus did appear on several occasions to his friends is accepted, we are faced with another problem. What is the relationship of the physical body which left the tomb to the quasi-physical yet spiritual glorified body that appeared to the disciples? It seemed the same. The wounds of the crucifixion were visible upon it, and it could eat and be handled, demonstrating the solidity of flesh and bone. Yet it was different, with the ability to pass through solid walls and doors like a living apport, and there was something about it that made it sometimes not instantly recognizable. One of the arguments for the truth of the stories of the appearance is the honesty with which it is admitted that some doubted, or did not at once know him. Concepts made familiar to us by psychical research do not help. Materializations, if they happen at all, do not empty the graves, even temporarily, of those who are materialized. Nor can we moderns hold the primitive belief in a 3-story universe where heaven is a physical place literally up there, that hell is another down there with earth in the middle, and that the quasi-physical body of the resurrected Jesus is to be found occupying space up there. Interestingly, a part solution to the problem was suggested in a document giving the viewpoint of a Pharisaic group contemporary with Jesus, entitled The Apocalypse of Baruch. This put forward the belief that all those who died in the messianic belief should rise again in the form in which they perished, in order that they might be recognized by each other and the living. These resurrected righteous would then be glorified in changes, so that they may be able to receive the world which does not die, and they shall be transferred into the splendor of angels. St. Paul adopts something like this idea when he writes that this corruption must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. Dare we ask how? What exactly is the relationship, if any, between the physical and the spiritual? Paul wrote that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, and spoke graphically of the mutual hostility of the flesh and the spirit. To discover the relationship between the physical and the spiritual, I suggest that a quantum jump into quantum physics may offer, if not a solution, at least a surmise that may inspire further thought. I was, I think, 15 years old when Rutherford split the atom, and I remember my science master saying that the splitting could result in the unraveling, by a chain reaction or a domino effect, of the entire universe. It was with some relief that we found ourselves still intact on the evening of the day of fission. But Rutherford's success did, in a sense, destroy the universe, which, up till then practically, and up till about 1900 theoretically, had been regarded as built up of minuscule but material building blocks. The work of Rutherford and others revealed not only that the building blocks were much smaller than anyone had hitherto visualized. An electron or similar particle is to an atom as a grain of salt would be to the dome of St. Peter's, Rome, but that they were not blocks at all. They were pure immaterial energy, without shape, color, temperature, or any of the qualities we normally ascribe to matter. A burst of pure electricity, or a flash of light the size of a grain of salt within the dome, would be a more accurate concept. But even that is wrong. For the moment we try to look at a particle, we alter its characteristics, whatever these may be, by the very fact of our looking. And everything, but everything, including the author and his readers, the desk at which he types, the chairs on which they sit, the mist on a lake, the densest metal, rock, or crystal known to man, is made up of the same pure immaterial energy. A conscious electron, proton, neutron, or other particle, for there are over 90 of them, travelling through a room or even Mount Everest would be like a voyager traversing galaxies in space with infinities of nothingness on every side of him, and contacts with other bodies as rare as meetings with planets in a solar system. If all the emptiness between the particles which make up our bodies were removed, we should be reduced to something which possibly could not be seen even under a microscope. If that idea seems incredible, we can go far beyond it, for there is an astronomical scenario that can conceive of a black hole in space so powerful that it might draw the whole universe into it as suds go down a sink. If this were to happen, the universe would be reduced to a dimensionless point, presumably waiting for the next Big Bang to start the whole business over again. I am neither a classical, nor a nuclear physicist, nor a mathematician, nor yet a mystic, and I can only record, without professing to understand them, phenomena that are described in other people's work. I particularly recommend for the layman Mysticism and the New Physics by Michael Talbot. These phenomena are beyond language to describe or the ability of any human mind fully to grasp. Everything in the universe is made up of the same particles, as we have seen, though there may exist a balancing universe made of antimatter built from antiparticles. But let us concentrate on the difficult enough universe of which we are a part. These particles, such as electrons, are identical. The electrons in the atoms of my body are the same as the electrons in the building around me and the trees I see through my window. There is indeed one concept of the many put forward by quantum physicists, that there may exist only one electron which somehow repeats itself an infinite infinities of numbers of times. Perhaps the mystic's consciousness of being one with all that is a literally true apprehension of the ultimate reality of the universe. We cannot dismiss the idea of the single electron too impatiently, at least until we have come to terms with some of the other alleged facts concerning particles. Electrons can apparently be in two places at the same time. If all the electrons in my body did this simultaneously, I should presumably experience bilocation. They can move backwards in what we call time retrogression, pass through two holes in a metal plate simultaneously without dividing. move from one orbit to another without crossing the space between, and perform a number of other tricks which mind cannot conceive nor language embody. No particle is anywhere, and no physicist will ever see or touch one, for particles do not exist as objects exist. When we can measure the ripple in water when there is no water, or the flap in a non-existent flag, for it is possible to have a wave in a vacuum where there is nothing waving. Furthermore, when the ripple and the flap and the wave are not any of these but points which never stand still, then we will, perhaps, be able to think of ourselves as beginning to understand particles. All we can say is that the primordial stuff of the universe appears to be wave particles of quanta, small energy units of light, which have no reality in terms of classical physics, since they are simultaneously and impossibly both waves and particles. There is, in fact, no ultimate physical substance to matter, which has been described as consisting of gravitationally trapped light. There is a school of thought that believes that light is intelligent. The Bible says God is light, also that God is spirit. One hesitates to say in this realm that things which are equal to the same thing are equal to one another, and that therefore matter, light, intelligence, spirit, God. But may there not be a hint here of an ultimate unity of the physical and the spiritual? The vision of the apocalypse of Baruch may not be so wide of the mark. Our ultimate entry to the world of spirit and the presence of God could be by the refinement of our physical beings into energy units of light, illumined still further by the intelligence of the self-consciousness we shall have developed in our lives or series of existences. To quote Paul again, "At present, we are men looking at puzzling reflections in a mirror. The time will come when we shall see reality whole and face to face. At present, all I know is a little fraction of the truth, but the time will come when I know it as fully as God now knows me." There are two further concepts that arise from quantum physicist thinking. The first is that we live in a world of illusion, in that we regard ourselves as separate from the universe. But there is not an in here, that is me, and an out there, which is everything else, as I have been conditioned to believe. We have been taught from birth to see the universe as we think it is, so that if my readers could see me as I type, they would agree that they saw an elderly, bespectacled, bald-headed man seated at a mahogany desk, tapping out black words onto white paper by means of a liver-coloured typewriter, when all that is really there is several clouds of invisible particles. We are all each other's creation, and the fact that we have an approximately collective vision and see and hear roughly the same sights and sounds may mean merely that telepathic communication may be far commoner and stronger than we ever thought it to be. There are fantasy-prone characters who can create for themselves at will, parallel to their ordinary existence, whole worlds which are more real than real. They apparently have the whale of a time and, interestingly enough, are usually extremely gifted psychically. Human beings experimentally subjected to total sensory deprivation eventually create for themselves entire other universes, as real as anything out there is to us, in the vast spaces they discover within the inner self. Sir James Jeans, the astronomer, said that the mind may be the creator and governor of the realm of matter, and Sarfati, a nuclear physicist, that the structure of matter may not be independent of consciousness. A second conclusion of quantum physicists' surmise is that all possible histories of the universe occur and interfere with each other, and that we cannot even think of ourselves as having had a past if our apparent history is just a region of the constructive interference of many interpenetrating universes. We may be living in one stratum of all possible histories, so that I may in another dimension be writing in the Anglo-Saxon derivative I would be speaking, because Harold won the Battle of Hastings or the French idiom Napoleon imposed upon the British nation when he routed Wellington at Waterloo. There could be a history where the body of Jesus never left the tomb, and another in which it did. So if all scholarly research about the resurrection or any other subject is an extension of delusion, and if, since all possible histories are coexistent, none is true and all are true, where are we? I think that we are somewhere, in that the layer of history and the body of experience given us by destiny are what we have to accept because we have no other. When all is said and done, as far as we are concerned, William the Conqueror did win the Battle of Hastings, and Wellington was victorious at Waterloo. These are, for us, the working out of the purpose of providence in the affairs of men. What happens on other planes of history for other populations of beings, even if they occupy the same space as, but other time than, ours cannot be our concern. We have to learn to develop from what we have, our own data of existence, literally, what we have been given. Secondly, a recognition that our view of life may be at best illusion, at worst delusion, should not blind us to the existence of that ultimate reality, to which philosophers have given many names and Christians call God. In the old days of Christianity, it was a sense of sinfulness that troubled believers. Now I think it may be more a sense of ignorance in the light of the incredible wonders of the universe that are opening out to us, so that the more we know, the less our thought and language can contain it. St. Augustine's dictum, "Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless till they rest in thee," is a truth I feel poignantly when my wearied intellect, never too strong at the best of times, has been battered by too much wonder, and I resign the outcome of all speculation to the ultimate Creator. And the problem of the relationship of the spiritual body of Jesus to that physical entity which left the tomb, as I believe it did. One factor that has been mentioned above is that of consciousness. It is this which enables us to conclude that we live a life of illusion and are nothing more than a mass of particles, and that, whether we are believers in anything, or agnostics, or atheists, mankind has a vast evolution yet to work through before it can begin to understand what is ultimate reality. If Christ was an incarnation of that reality, as Christian belief is that he was, then I see no difficulty in his consciousness controlling the particles in his body to pass them through the vast spaces modern science knows to exist in solid walls and doors, to contract them at will into his recognizable physical self when required, and expand them into pure spirit when the time came for him to depart from view in the physical world. It may be that the relationship of matter and spirit is not a mutually exclusive one. Picture a spectrum in which, say, the extreme left is the most solid matter we know, crystals, metals, rocks, moving to less and less solid objects, liquid, gases, molecules, atoms, particles. Then we can conceive a point on the right of the spectrum where there is an interface, everything from the atoms leftwards being physical, everything from the atoms rightwards the raw essence of spirit, needing only consciousness to make it completely spiritual. It may be that consciousness exists immanently in the universe of particles. I don't know. But I believe that it exists transcendentally, so that if Sir James Jeans was right in his much-quoted dictum that the universe is more like a great thought than a great machine, there must be a thinker to think the thought. This is incidentally a concept which seems to me to help to an understanding of the doctrine of the Trinity. A thinker, his process of thinking, and his express thought are coexistent. None can exist without the other two. God the Creator is the thinker. God the Holy Spirit is his thinking. God the Son is his express thought. Everything I have written is pure surmise, although expressed in the hope that it may help devotional thinking at Eastertide. Demanding on our credulity as the resurrection of Jesus is, and puzzling as many of its circumstances are, it is no more wonderful nor incredible than the world of the Spirit which, it seems to me, modern science is revealing as existing as the foundation of the physical universe.
You have been listening to Talking Point from the Church's Fellowship for Psychical and Spiritual Studies. To find out more, please visit www.churchesfellowship.co.uk.